Hello, and welcome to the 41st episode of Cora's Place. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me for today's conversation. In today's episode, I'll be talking about my 2024 senior high camp work experience. As always, if you like what you hear, please leave a review and/or comments, follow my podcast, and tell your friends. Also, please follow the podcast page I've made on Facebook. If you'd like to contact me via email instead of a Facebook message, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org. If you are new here, welcome. I'm your host, Cora, and I am so excited to have you on this journey with me. Today, I want to share about my experience of working the senior high week of camp in 2024. It was a hard week in some ways, but it was also absolutely incredible. I will do my best to describe it in a way that seems adequate, but that will probably be challenging, to be honest, because of how amazing it was. It definitely had some challenges, but it was an amazing and fun week overall, even if it was super busy or stressful at times. It was interesting because the camp actually lost power for several hours from the Monday night that the camp week started to around lunchtime the following day, a Tuesday of that week, due to some storms that came through. We didn't lose power any time during the 2023 experience, though, which was good. I have not really ever enjoyed storms. I'm not necessarily scared of them, though. They just aren't my favorite thing. Thankfully, we have always been safe from storms so far, though, as of the recording of this episode, that is. I think it's safe to say that everyone was so excited when the power came back on. We, or most people, were all in the dining hall at that point since it was lunchtime, and when the power finally came back on in there, everyone cheered and was thrilled. I know I was definitely ecstatic. It had gotten quite warm in the dining hall while the power was out, since air conditioning doesn't work without electricity, but we managed okay. The camp was without power for I think about 16-ish hours or so, which felt like a super long time to me. Thankfully, everyone that was at the camp for that week stayed safe during the storm. The staff had a lot of cleanup to do around the campgrounds from the storm. The camp lost at least a couple of trees, so there were some people that took care of that. One of the big trees by the chapel building ended up going down, but thankfully it didn't fall onto the chapel or onto any cabin buildings, so that was good. We enjoyed listening to music sometimes during meals in the dining hall that week, and I thought it was so fun getting to watch the campers sing the songs. It definitely brought a really big smile to my face, and it made me laugh sometimes. Not necessarily laughing at the campers in a way that made fun of them, but just seeing them so happy and having fun made me happy. One of the biggest highlights of that week for me was getting to attend chapel in the evenings. It was incredible, and I definitely enjoyed it so much. The speaker that was there during that week did an absolutely fantastic job, and I loved getting to hear him speak. Chapel was definitely a very meaningful experience that week. The music was amazing, and the messages were amazing as well, especially on the very last night, which was a Friday, before people went home. That night was completely incredible, and it's hard to try and describe it adequately in words. The whole week was great, though. I am so glad I finally got to experience working all of the senior high week at camp. If you listen to the series I made of my camp experience from the year prior, meaning 2023, you might remember that I actually left early from that week due to a situation that had come up. I won't go into all the details again in this episode, but if you want to hear about it, you can go back and listen to that episode. The title of that episode is Camp Episode 4, Joys/Challenges of the Summer. In some ways, that episode was kind of a tough one to make and then release, but I'm glad I was able to share about it with you all. Anyway, let's get back to the 2024 camp experience of working senior high week. There was a lot of cleaning that we did. We were a little short-staffed too because some of our staff was camping that week. Not everyone, but there were several staff that camped. If I remember correctly, it was most of the guys' staff that was camping, but there were at least a couple of girls' staff that were camping as well. I think we did have some part-time staff working that week, so that helped too. Not necessarily very many, though. I don't remember exactly for sure, so it's possible I could be wrong. There were a couple of days during that week where I felt a lot of emotions. I think it was at least partially because that week marked 1 year of something hard that happened in my life, which I share about in the episode I just mentioned a little bit ago from my 2023 camp experience. It wasn't as hard as I had thought it might have been, but there were still some hard aspects of it. Overall, however, it was a wonderful week. There were a lot of great parts of that week. I especially loved the Friday night of chapel. A few of the campers got to share reflections, and it was completely incredible to watch. I really enjoyed that a lot. One of the biggest highlights of that week for me that I mentioned a little bit earlier in this episode was getting to attend chapel in the evenings. It was incredible, and I definitely enjoyed it so much. The speaker that was there for that week did an absolutely fantastic job and had some really good messages that we got to hear. It was also fun talking with him a little bit throughout the week when I was able to. I didn't necessarily get to talk to him a ton that week, but I did a little bit, which I really enjoyed a lot. He is a great speaker. There were definitely several emotions that I felt over the course of the whole week, but I feel like at least a good chunk of it happened over that weekend, meaning the Friday night before the senior high camp ended on that Saturday, to the Monday a couple of days later. Not bad emotions necessarily, but just a big mixture of them. This is partially unrelated to this episode, but one of my favorite things to get in the canteen, the camp's snack store, was ice cream. I usually ordered chocolate ice cream and then got Butterfinger and in either peanut butter cups, Kit Kat, or something else in it as well. It kind of depended on my mood and what I felt like doing at that point. Sometimes I would get Twist or vanilla instead of just chocolate for my ice cream though. It was so yummy. The ice cream I could do that with was only available during evenings though, so I couldn't do it in the afternoons. I sometimes got a slushie in the afternoon, but not as often as I got ice cream in the evenings because we didn't always have slushies available. I think the slushies were good, but I kind of preferred the ice cream usually. I think it was soft serve ice cream or very similar, but it was so delicious and I looked forward to it every time I was able to have it. I enjoyed it a lot. However, let's get back to what I was saying before about the emotions. I think part of it stemmed from being tired and it just being a slightly busier week for our staff since some were camping, which meant that we didn't have as many people working. Thankfully, the week went well despite both reasons. I think it was one of my favorite weeks because I missed out on part of the week when I worked in 2023, so I finally got to experience the whole week, which was so exciting to me. Getting to hear the reflections on the last night was definitely a sweet, memorable, amazing, and incredible experience. I am so thankful I got to serve for 2 summers at the camp. I camped there when I was younger, but didn't ever experience senior high week as a camper. I only camped a couple of years or so, but when I was, I think, elementary school age. I don't know if it came to mind both times I worked there, but I know that at least during my first time at one point, relatively early in the summer, I thought about why I was really there at the camp. I worked those 2 summers to serve God, the camp and the campers, to gain new friends and experiences, and to gain job experience. I did not do it just to get money. While the money from both times was helpful and nice, it wasn't really about the money for me. It was about serving God in the camp. When they did the reflections on the final night of Senior High Week 2024, that also kind of reminded me of why I was there, and that I kind of get to play a part in these stories because of being there working. Even if I am not necessarily a direct part of them, like the counselors, speaker, or the dean would be, if that makes any sense. By working at the camp, I also got to have opportunities to give back to a camp that is special to me. I know that this episode is mainly just about the Senior High Week, but I want to just briefly talk about the final week that I was there. That week was also an emotional week because it was the end of a chapter of my life, in at least a few ways, so that was kind of hard. But on the last day, there was a lot that happened. I won't go into all the details, but it was kind of a busy day between cleaning at the camp, me getting ready to go home, and some other things too. It was also a hard day in some ways because it was the closing of a couple chapters in my life, so there was definitely an adjustment period in my life from those things. When my family arrived to the camp to get me, I gave my dad a huge hug. I had missed him like crazy. The adjustment being back home with my parents and siblings again was hard sometimes, but I managed fine. In the first, basically 3 weeks after getting home from camp, I was only home for 4 of those nights, and I'll explain a little bit of why in the next episode, so stay tuned for next week's episode. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please follow, leave a comment and or review of my podcast if you haven't already, and please follow my podcast page on Facebook so you never miss an update. If you have any verses you'd like me to read on a future episode, or if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org or send me a message on my podcast page on Facebook and I will get back to you when I can. Hope you tune in next week for the 42nd episode.